and this is the Channel 4 News.
And my name is Veronica Corningstone. Tonight we will be exploring the issues that arose during the Cold War, in specific how both superpowers employed the tactics of containment and expansionism.
Veronica, indeed, containment and expansionism were used during the Cold War, but what do those two tactics mean? Well, my fellow San Diegoanians, containment is when a big country tries to enclose another big country's ideologies in an area of dominance and power within a specific area.
Why, thank you, Ron, for explaining what containment is. On the other hand, expansionism is when one country tries to spread its ideals and authority over other areas and countries of the world.
Now, if you'd like to see these tactics in action, you don't have to look very far. Expansionism and containment strategies can be seen in Germany following the defeat of the Nazis after World War II.
Germany was split into two areas, the East and the West. The West being run by pro-capitalist, liberal countries, and the East under Soviet control. Furthermore, Berlin was divided into West and East Berlin, both under the same control as West and East Germany.
In 1961, the Soviets built the Berlin Wall to keep the East Berlin citizens in East Berlin. In comparison to West Berlin, East Berlin was substantially less prosperous, leading people to move to the West. The act of building the physical barrier between the two opposing areas is an obvious act of containment, where communism had to contain liberalism, or else the population of communists would migrate to the capitalist area and there would be a sharp decline in the communist population.
Indeed, Ron, another employment of these tactics is seen in the creation of the United States Marshall Plan and the Soviets' Molotov Plan. Both of these plans exercise expansionism and containment through the very nature of what they were created to do. The Marshall Plan was an initiative of the U.S. used to recruit European countries that were left in shambles after World War II by offering large sums of money to boost their economy. In return, the countries would become capitalist, democratic states, and they were an ally to America. The Molotov Plan was the Soviets' response to the Marshall Plan, where they offered money to those countries.
Now, any state that was considered a satellite nation of the Soviet Union was expected not to take the bribe that was offered by the Marshall Plan, because it probably wouldn't go over that well with any Soviet leader. And since both of these plans aim to expand one country's ideological perspective while impeding the progression of the other, either plan can be considered both an act of containment and expansionism.
Wow, this is truly a very interesting topic, isn't it, Ron?
That it is, Veronica. That it is. Now, over to the sports counter with Champ Kind.
Tramp here! Thank you, Ron. You know I'm all about having fun, getting a few soda pops in me. But as for tonight, we have a special celebration. Tonight is the anniversary of the 1972 Summit Series final that was held in Moscow, where the battle between communist Soviet Union and capitalist Canada face off in a heated battle for world hockey domination. Now, this was no ordinary hockey game. This game was a face-off between communism and capitalism. Phew, the stakes were high. Keep in mind the Cold War was underway during this time. Keeping in line with the next thing, containment and expansionism, it is a clear win that for either team didn't just mean that they received a prestigious title, it meant that either ideology was superior to the other. Bragging rights. In a sense, it was a form of expansionism because each team was trying to show the world audience that their ideology was clearly better. While at the same time, it was an act of containment because if they did win, then they would be halting the progression of the opposing ideology.
Thanks, Champ. Now we go to Brian Fantan in the field with the Channel 4 News exclusive. Brian?
Oh, hi, we're here in between the borders of North and South Korea. It's been a very few tense days here. If viewers are unaware, there has been a new development in the dispute between the separate states of North and South Korea, where the US and the Soviet Union have begun aiding the military forces on either side. The South Korea Army has sided with the American military and are battling the North Koreans with their Soviet allies. To my knowledge, this is a recurring theme of the tactics of containment and expansionism being used. The situation that is developing here on the Pacific Coast is a shining example of these two approaches taken to gain advantage of the opposing ideology. On both sides of the border, the ideology being expressed through each country's political and economic system has led to the allegiance between them and the dominant superpowers of said ideologies. Both superpowers are using the war as a cover for the ideology warfare that is taking place. America sees the expansionism of communism to South Korea as a threat to capitalism, meaning that they must do whatever they can to suppress the progression of their enemies. Furthermore, if there was to be a communist takeover in all of Korea's landmass, then the domino theory could possibly take effect. Eventually, there could be a full communist overthrow of any pro-capitalist governments left in Indochina or Asia. This expansionism of communist influence is the Soviet Union's main objective. So far, this is the most recent information we have on this pressing topic. Coming from you from North Korea and South Korea, I am Ryan Bandana. Now, I must finish up my business. Thank you.
Great story, Brian. Just so compelling. So rich. Well, that's all we have for you from Channel 4 News here. I'm Ron Burgundy. You stay classy, San Diego.
And I'm Veronica Corningstone. Thanks for stopping by.
But mainly, stay classy, San
Thanks for
Diego.
stopping by.
Stay classy. I'm Ron Burgundy. In the source, USSR leader Joseph Stalin is engaging in a game of basketball. The words on the hoop state European recovery, and the words on the basketball say Marshall Plan. The main quotation for the cartoon is, "Can he block it?" As well, the basketball seems to be heading towards the hoop at a brisk pace without the risk of missing the hoop. Finally, Stalin's face is expressing concern and worry, possibly for the impending points the United States may score.
Within the source, the main objectives present have symbolic significance to the Cold War. The basketball game itself represents the ideological battle between the United States and the Soviet Union, which went on for many years. The battle was carried out using many different tactics and forms, such as a proxy war, a heated space race, and the intense drive to further their own military and weapons strength. The ball being thrown towards the net demonstrates how the United States was able to change the game with the Marshall Plan. This plan enabled the American to gain foothold with the capitalist ideology through offering of money to help the economic recovery in various European countries.
The concern and fear being expressed on the face of Stalin could be in response to this movement by the U.S. Although his face is showing concern, Stalin remains in a defensive stance, ready to block the shot. This defensive position can be interpreted as the Soviets' response to the Marshall Plan through the Molotov Plan. This plan was essentially a Soviet version of the Marshall Plan, where the USSR offered money to European countries and in return they supported the communist ideology.
The perspective being expressed by the author is that of pro-capitalists, which is in support of the Marshall Plan. This can be assumed because the Marshall Plan is about to score a goal against the Soviet team, and Stalin looks distressed and is unable to react quickly enough to thwart the recovery of the European economy through the Marshall Plan.
The concept that this cartoon is referring to is the use of expansionism and containment during the Cold War. The use of the Marshall Plan by America was an attempt to expand the capitalist sphere of influence throughout Europe, and in contrast, the Molotov Plan was the Soviets' attempt to contain this expansionism. This also refers to the concept of balance of power that was used during the Cold War. If America was able to gain a foothold in the European economy, then the Soviets had to recruit some of the other European countries to communism so they too had a sphere of influence in Europe. This in turn resulted in the balancing of communist and capitalist influence and power within the world.
In conclusion, this source of propaganda is a great example of containment and expansionism that occurred during the Cold War in regards to the Marshall and Molotov plans.